my loves, my name is Paige, this is Paige the Page, and today we're going to be doing my March wrap up. Hello my darlings and welcome to this video. Today I want to be talking through all the books that I read and how I went with the Roll of Readathon that is created by the lovely book fan named Mel. So I'm going to talk through the statistics, but I also want to let you know that I did end up vlogging for the month. I have decided to take April off of vlogging with Magical Readathon. I need to not have that on my plate. I'm not reading anyway, so that's great. So I will talk through the stats and then how everything went for Roll of Reads, what prompts were assigned to each of the books. If you do want to check out anything else that might have gone on throughout the month, I will leave the vlogs linked down below. In March, I read a total of 11 books, which equated to 4,109 pages read. This equated to be 133 pages per day, but average pages per book was 373, which I am thrilled at. In terms of page range, I had 2 that were in the hundreds, 2 in the 200s, 3 in the 300s, 1 in the 400s, 2 in the 500s, and 1 in the 800s. My average rating was a 4.14, and the genres that I read from was 1 classic, 7 fantasy, 1 manga, 1 romance, and 1 sci-fi. I read 3 books purely on audio. I read 1 physically and then did the physical audio combination of 7. I read 4 young adult and 7 adult. I had 2 3.5 stars, 6 4 stars, 1 4.5, and 2 5 stars. I read 4 standalones. I started 2 novel series. Did I? What the fuck did I start? And 1 manga series. I had 2 books that were continuations in series. I caught up on 1 series and I finished another. My biggest book was FOs Fate by Robin Hobb, which was 805 pages, and my shortest was Thorn Hedge by T. Kingfisher, coming in at 116 pages. And my listening hours for this month was 45 hours, which I think is the highest it's been this year. So let's dive on to the books. The first book that I read was Soul Eater Volume 1, and this was for the prompt of a friend or family fave book. Ren from the Reading Rant put this on my Bookish Peeps challenge, and so I needed to start off the series, and I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. I see a lot of potential for this, but just wow. Everyone had warned me about the fan service in this first one, and yeah, that's fair. No going in that this is a lot of very interestingly proportioned bathing women in some descriptions. But I really enjoyed the magic system and how the souls compatibility work. So I'm very curious to continue on and see where the story goes. I feel that there is so much potential for it to be a really fantastic narrative. I'd just like for them to tone it down a little bit. It's just not my kind of vibe that I'm looking for in a manga series. I fully understand that a lot of people will very much enjoy it. Just I'd like to know more about the plot than the physical attributes of the characters. If that could be done, that'd be great. So I'm very excited, but it was a, you know, starting point to the series, which I am very excited to continue on with. The next book that I finished was Thorn Hedge by T. Kingfisher, and giving this 4 stars. I had a lot of fun just sitting and listening to this. I was really struggling with motivation at the beginning of the month, and I had decided to tackle FOs Fate straight out of the gate. So this just provided something a little bit different, and I really enjoyed the take on the Sleeping Beauty story because it was done in a way that just made it that little bit different. I ended up picking this up for Pokemon, so I'm very happy to have got to it. The fairy godmother element to this was just a very good time, and the protagonist has a tendency to turn herself into a toad. So take of that what you will. It is T. Kingfisher's whimsical fairy tale writing that I just really adore, and so it was a really nice short retelling. Next up, I read FOs Fate by Robin Hobb, and this was 5 stars. I know that it took me a while to get into it, and I don't think it was this book's fault that I was slumping at the beginning of the month. I just needed a quick win, and this is a long win. This is beautiful. The characters just and the way that Golden Fool ended to where it starts in this just makes me so happy. I was very emotional about some of the characters. I'm still fucking furious at one of the decisions at the end, but I understand and respect it, but also god damn it, you motherfucker. And yeah, so I had a great time. I love Hobbs' writing. I love seeing the world just continuing to grow. I love that we're getting more dragons, although they weren't overly prevalent in this. It was a very interesting way of exploring the magic and how it works with the dragons themselves as well. So I am very cautious to go into the Dragon Keeper and the next quartet because I have heard that it's not the strongest, but where we've got the foundations for, I'm really hopeful that I'm just going to fall in love with it. This was also for the Roll of Reads prompt of a favorite author. The hobby is continuing to cement themselves as one of my favorite authors, so I was so happy to be able to continue and finish off the Tawny Man trilogy, and now to continue on for the rest of them. I'm so excited. But yeah, this came very close to breaking me in ways that I was not prepared for. The next book that I read was Planet Barbarians, and this was for Roll of Reads. I had a random genre and got sci-fi, and this was also fulfilling the TBR prompt for Cluedo of Scribdor Everson. And I ended up giving this a 3.5 stars, which is higher than what I thought it was going to be. I definitely struggle with particular elements of the protagonist's belief, which is fine. I don't have to agree with every character belief in every story that I read. I just found it interesting to go about it in that direction, and the male protagonist is definitely, I understand that he's needing to get his clan out of situations, but it's just very broski minded, which was an interesting thing to sit with. But you know, I overall had an okay fun time reading it. It definitely was darker than I anticipated, especially at the beginning. Like that fucking one of the initial scenes, just oh fuck. I knew going in that there was a rape scene not too far into it. It was fairly close to the beginning. I just also wasn't prepared for how things were described. I did really like the feistiness and tenacity of our protagonist. I will be continuing with the series, so I'm cautiously optimistic to see where it goes, because there was a decent amount of world building presented, but we've still got a long way to go to explain and see how this has all happened. But my intrigue is there, which I didn't think it was going to be, so that was a positive. The next book that I read was for my book haul revisited, so I managed to do it, and that is Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. And I ended up giving this 4 stars. It was darker than I thought it was going to be, which was great because I really quite enjoy dark narratives, and it was a lot more accessible than I thought it was going to be. Again, fantastic. I think for me this worked better than the other Dickens that I'd read, which was A Tale of Two Cities, because that was set in a historical war setting, and I don't do war stories. The characters were strong in that, so I could still enjoy it, but this was just focusing in one central area and had a lot of different elements to it. I also really enjoyed that there were mystery elements to it, and it was very easy to just sit and have the story told to me. I didn't have to put too much focus into it because it was paid by the word. So there is a lot of fodder in it, which is fine because it was nice to just be able to drift through the story. So I found that surprisingly accessible. And then the characters were very interesting. The names of them, some of them were just on absolute point. I surprised myself with how much I ended up enjoying this. I think a reread will do me good to be able to solidify a lot of the story, but I think that if someone is wanting to try classics and like a darker sort of mystery set in London with poverty as the antithesis, then this is actually going to be a fairly good starting point for that. Next up, for random color generator, I ended up getting, like, I think it was black gray, and it matched perfectly to Ash by Melinda Lowe. I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. I was very excited to pick this up, have wanted to for the longest time, and there were elements to this that I just wasn't expecting in a Cinderella retelling, but I'm so happy that it went there. I think that the line between worlds was very fascinating, and the way that Ash's character continues to develop throughout the story. I just really enjoyed watching them navigate the trials that were living in their family and dealing with their grief, but also thinking that there's something more that's going on behind the story and not giving up on that belief. And so it was one of those stories that just made me so happy, but it's also not a light story, and it was just done really well for what I wanted from it. So I'm very happy to have read it, and there were so many cute little elements to it, which I just adored. Following that, I read a Goodreads Choice Award winner and went with The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. I have counted this as a continuation because I do have How the King of Elfhame Learned to Hate Stories, and I'd like to see how that finishes it off, but I will count that as finishing the series and start the Stolen Prince duology as their own separate thing. But I ended up giving this 4 stars. The Wicked King really escalated things for me, and I really enjoyed where it went. I found that The Cruel Prince wasn't that memorable, so going into The Wicked King, not really remembering much of The Cruel Prince, I was pleasantly surprised. And then I dove straight into this, which is rare for me to be reading one book after the other. It's the year for it, but it was surprising. Ended up giving it 4 stars because I really enjoyed where the story went. I thought that the character dynamics in this were exceptional. I really just enjoyed seeing these characters come into their own and navigating the world and the politics with somewhat wild abandon. I think it was a solid conclusion to the arcs. It was fun. It was very, very fun. And I think coming off the back of Ash was an interesting choice on my half. I didn't realize the choices I were making, but there's something very captivating about where we ended up, and I was very happy with that. The next book that I read was Midnight Ruin by Katie Robert, and this was for gifted or from a sub box. So Ash gifted this to me in February for Valentine's Day, so I was very, very excited to get to this. 5 stars. Katie Robert just knows how to tickle my fancy. We're following Eurydice, Charon, and Orpheus, and their character dynamics was delightful. We are definitely broaching more into the politics, the world, the further expansion and conflict that is happening, rather than just being pitting against one another in the world that this is. It's her characters. She just writes them in a way that has them buried into my soul. I know that not everyone's going to enjoy these, and there were moments that were very reminiscent of Akamath, where you're like, shit's going down, guys. Like, maybe you need to not be doing the things that you're currently doing, but also I'm not mad that you're currently doing those things because yee! So it was a grand fucking time. I am so excited to see this world continuing to expand and grow. I love seeing the different players throughout, and obviously not all of the Dark Olympus characters are going to show up in every single book, but it's so nice seeing the different ones that choose to crop up, and I'm very excited for the 7th book based off some things that were dropped in here, so it's a good time all around. From there, I read The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Korniak and gave this 4 stars. This was such an interesting story. I am not too familiar with the origin of Ragnarok and where shit went down. So I wasn't sure of Agraborda's original story. I think they were just briefly mentioned, but I could be mistaken. They could be a prominent character in Norse mythology. I'm just not overly familiar with it. But the way that this progressed was fantastic. I loved their character, the way that they went about their relationship with Loki and subsequent things, just like, yes please. The strength of the characters was just wonderful, and I really enjoyed seeing their origin and how 3 different elements of Ragnarok came into existence. I think that Loki is a character that I've always found charming in the trickster sort of capacity, and in this it's done the same. He has that charming nature, and it just sits very well, although he is a dick because all of the gods are dicks. But it was so fascinating, and then getting to see the exploration of the different worlds, marvelous time. So I really enjoyed this and surprised me with where it went, considering I don't know much of the original tales. I made the very interesting decision to join the Mass Effect read-along, which is being hosted by beautiful bookish Bethany. I don't know if I will follow the entire plan or if I will just continue to chip away. But for that, I read Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas and ended up giving it 4 stars. I think this surprised me more than the Cruel Prince series. I know that I like Sarah's writing. I've read the Akatar series, All Bar Silver Flames, and I've read Two of the Crescent City. So I knew that her writing was one that I vibed with. What I didn't expect was how much I was going to like our protagonist. Overall, I really enjoyed the character dynamics. I appreciated where we were going and the way that her experiences did shape her to where she was. It took me by surprise with what the narrative actually was, because I had no idea going in. I just know Selena Sardothian is like the world's greatest assassin, and you know, you start off there, but by Kingdom of Ash we're on a completely different playing field. So it was interesting, and I'm curious to see where it goes. I will definitely appreciate watching other people talk about the Easter eggs, because I don't know what I'm looking for, but it was a good time. So I'm actually excited to continue on with the series and see where we get up to and how everything ends up shaping up. The main reason I'm doing this is because I would like to go into Crescent City 3 with all the background knowledge. So I want to read through to get to Silver Flames to be able to get to CC3, which is incredibly infuriating for me, but I'd like to give it a go and just see how everything comes to play. So I will be reliant on other people to tell me where my connections are, but I think for this series I'm going to have a decent time. And then the final book, which I read for the prompter from my wish list, which then a book fiend named Mel kindly gifted to me, was Jade War by Fonda Lee. And this was for BookStara's Read Along. We've just had the live show today at the time of filming, and we've decided to push Jade Legacy to be able to read over May and June, just to be able to fully have our feelings felt. I ended up giving this 4 stars as it didn't captivate me quite in the same way as Jade City, and I found that a lot of it just went one way or the other for me, and it was very much, we're here, we're now here, we're doing this, okay, we're over here. And whilst I didn't find it jarring, it was very much like there is so much information to take in right now. So having this be a book club read is amazing, because having everyone in the comments be putting up their own thoughts and opinions was very helpful in consolidating where we were at and what I was feeling. I have definitely been an underdog in opinions for parts of this, mainly one misogynistic character that I don't vibe with their personality. I appreciate them as a character, just could not stand them as a person. Consequently, there was an action that I was like, I told you, and the conversations around that has been amazing. I think for me, obviously I don't want to go into spoilers, although I will be doing a full spoiler vlog of Jade Legacy for this. Fonda Lee proved that she's not afraid to kill characters, and for this she went back on that, and I was like, don't do it. It wouldn't be the story that it was or will be in Jade Legacy if that had been a different outcome. So I'm like, I respect, but also like, goddamn. 4 stars. We had a fantastic discussion today. I am still giggling at it. We ended up talking about Pokemon Go for an hour as well, so if you're curious, that is on Danielle's channel, and I'll leave that link down below, because we had a great old time. We definitely go off on tangents every so often, and it was a great time. This plus Throne of Glass, Ice Planet Barbarians, and Thorn Hedge were the books that I read in the month of March for Roll of Reads and all my other challenges. And it was a good time. I had a lot of fun. There was definitely some curveballs in there, and I definitely struggled throughout the month. I just found my reading has been completely whack this year, which is fine. It happens. But it definitely took a lot of motivation to be able to get back into the swing of things. And in April, I've now fallen off of the things again, because that's who I am as a person. I'm making my way through some really fantastic books. I'm very excited to see what April holds. So let me know in the comments, what did you read in March? Did you find any new favorites? If so, what were they? How'd you get along with them? Did any just blow your mind? And if you like this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more of this mess, feel free to subscribe. I'll hopefully see you in my next video. Bye!